I'm excited.
Why's that?
We have an apparel sponsor, Parry Athletic. Such good gear, and it's incredible. I've been enjoying it.
Bro, George came through, messaged us on the Instagram, said he's been following our program for ages. He's getting stronger and more mobile, and he's got this cool gear company called Parry, and he wants to send us some stuff.
And he told me that his mission was to create the best pair of training shorts ever.
Yeah, he wanted something that he could lift and roll in, and that could accommodate thick, muscular thighs and hips.
And that suits us.
Speaks to us.
Also, what I like is I love the colorful design. It actually looks really cool.
I am the most colorful dude on the mats these days, hands down.
Yeah, you get that kind of expression feel. A lot of other jiu-jitsu gear is kind of a bit boring.
Yeah, it's
By
all like
comparison.
grays and blacks and shit. This stuff is the color and the vibrancy.
It makes you stand out. And I think the thing that I've loved about it is just it feels good. It feels good. It looks good. And you, ladies and gentlemen, can get a discount when you go to checkout. If you go to parryathletics.com, when you go to checkout, put in the code Bulletproof20 and you get 20% off. Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast.
Here we are.
The question is being humble good for BJJ? Humility versus ego. A lot of what is spoken about in jiu-jitsu, BJJ culture, being humble. Leave your ego at the door.
Your ego is not your amigo.
I've heard this before. And the rhyme, dropping the rhyming verse. Because we also believe things that rhyme to be truer. But I don't think this is the case. Let's talk about it, because there is many good examples of people in jiu-jitsu who express humility or being humble. And then there's Gordon Ryan. And then we've got people who are really good at jiu-jitsu who are not humble at all. So let's talk through this, because I've got the definition of ego here.
Okay, yep.
I don't have the definition of humility.
I'll bring that up, yep. What's ego?
So the definition of this is just, you can just Google search it straight up. A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. And then when you do the psychoanalysis of what the ego is, the part of the mind that mediates between conscious and unconscious, responsible for reality testing and sense of personal identity.
Can you read the first part again?
A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance.
Okay.
The ego. So when you say it like that, that doesn't sound so bad.
It's not saying that they have a high ego. It's just saying that
that
is their sense of that. Yep.
The ego, right?
Yep.
And I think for anything you do in life, you have to have awareness of yourself, and you've got to, if you aspire to improve at something, you do need a degree of will and sense. It's not so much self-importance, but I matter to me, and therefore I'm going to act towards improving myself.
Yeah, I would say that is a sense of self-importance.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with it.
No,
right?
It's healthy.
Yeah, I think it's what I take from that. It's cool that you define it, because I've often wondered what is the actual literal definition. And similar to the word stress, whereby there's a negative connotation attached to stress. But if you look it up, stress just refers to an input that brings about some kind of pressure on the system.
Like a stimulus.
Is stimulus, exactly. Yeah. And it could be good, it could be bad.
Yeah.
And as we know, like a certain dose of stress is great to make you stronger and better and whatever. Too much of it may be problematic. So in any case, but we also stress like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same with ego, isn't it? We all use it like it's like you should have no ego.
Yeah.
But when you put it like that, you should absolutely have a sense of self-importance.
Yes.
Because
you are important.
You're the only thing that you have.
That's right. Yeah. and I've met people who don't have that. And actually, when we talk about low self-esteem and mental health, this is something that people battle with, because they're told, hey, you need to fit in and you need to don't be egotistical, et cetera, et cetera. And look, this is another thing that I've been very interested in myself, because I've met people who are top-level competitors and they seem like very nice people. But and it's not to say that they're not nice people, but when you dig down into their competitive side, it's incredibly selfish. And they're not interested in you. They're interested in themselves, because you have to be very self-focused to get very good at something. You do. To be one of the best in the world, that's what it takes. And it was the difference between arrogance and confidence. We're okay with someone being confident as long as they can kind of back it up, right? And arrogance is the idea that someone is very much, they think very highly of themselves, but there's not much evidence to support that.
Right.
Whereas confidence is, I say I can do something, and then I demonstrate I can do the thing.
Right.
You know, and it's the evidence to support the confidence. Now, if we talk about someone like Gordon Ryan, he's someone who loves to talk about himself and how good he is, similar to our friend Nicholas Merengali. And, you know, that these are guys who can support their claims. They beat everybody. They are very good at jiu-jitsu. But, you know, they are also, you know, they are very different people. But, you know, there's something about it which is a little bit off-putting, right? When you hear someone talk about themselves, or when someone refers to themselves in the third person, JT doesn't like that. It's kind of crazy. So
you're jerking off. JT doesn't like it like that.
No. But that's the thing.
Would JT like it?
Starting to get creepy now. Here's the thing. I'm actually going to say right now, I believe that being humble is not good for your jiu-jitsu.
Well, wait. We haven't even defined what humility
Okay,
means.
please go to humility.
But this is a big day for the dictionary, guys. I looked up arrogant. Now, this is interesting. Arrogant is having or revealing an exaggerated sense of one's own importance or abilities.
Right.
So that an exaggerated sense.
Right.
So that's it. So it's like, yeah, so confidence is perhaps...
self-belief. Or
yeah, it's not an exaggerated, it's an honest sense.
right.
You know, you have a strong sense of your own importance or ability. But arrogance is when you go beyond that to a point where you're exaggerating it a little bit.
Yeah, but isn't that more about cultural acceptance? Like here in Australia, we really don't like it when people talk themselves up.
Nah.
But in America, it's you know, and I just see it more in the media. That's more championed. Like, they're the man, and how good's that? And that's what gets you attention. And you know, and I think where you're from in the world can change how you perceive what's arrogance and what's confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because
totally.
even though, you know, Gordon Ryan talks a lot about himself, he has backed up the things he's talked about. In jiu-jitsu at least.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's probably why there's a lot of people here that be like, he's so cocky, he's so arrogant. Yeah. And then I'm sure that large part of his fan base like, no, he's just confident
because he does what he says,
and he actually does. Yeah, like you have to give that.
Got to give that to him. Yeah.
Okay. Next up, the other word that's in the dictionary,
just the only other word,
humility, the quality of having a modest or low view of one's importance. Modest or low view.
Yeah.
Right.
And you meet those people who are truly great, but they don't tell you about it. You just appreciate that about them.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, you're a phenom, and even often you meet people who downplay how good they are.
Yep.
Because they don't want that attention, or they don't, because there's many people out there who are exceptional and they do care about being exceptional, but they don't want all the associated attention. They may not be an extroverted, attention-grabbing person. They're just trying to master the art. But what I wanted to say is, if we look at the people who are the best at jiu-jitsu in the world, I don't think you're necessarily seeing these people to be humble by these definitions. Like the absolute best people in the world are not necessarily humble.
I know.
Now, there's plenty of examples. Like, so John, our friend John Tang, he trains with Mikey Musumeci.
Shout out.
Malaysia
fam.
Yep. And
Malaysia and Singapore.
Singapore, you're mixing it up.
Always, yeah.
But the man does travel. But what I was going to say is...
He's Asian.
Wow. So accurate. No, I believe he's actually Australian, but he lives in Asia. But whatever you say. This is what I wanted to say. He says Mikey is incredibly humble.
Yeah.
Even though he's so achieved.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but we've also seen Mikey blow up and get upset. Like have the ego, we could say it was ego when I think Freakazoid might have called him like a fake black belt.
Oh, he was criticizing him for talking Portuguese.
Yeah.
But that was just him getting upset.
But that's what I'm saying. But being upset is also a sign of like emotion and that, you know, he criticized him and he took great offense, and that could be a sign of ego too, right? We all have it.
I mean, it could be, but I don't think it necessarily is.
No, but what I'm saying is Mikey is I believe a good example of someone who's humble.
Yeah. All right. So here's a, you know, I see what you're getting at. And I think that in terms of how we culturally use humble, you're like, yeah, he's a humble guy. Look at him. He's so nice, friendly, respectful, you know. However, here's the question. When you are in the moment, when you're rolling with someone at that level, right? Like someone like Mikey, when he's out there fighting world-class athletes and applying his jiu-jitsu, is there the space to be humble in that moment internally? Or is there a huge level of confidence and like you have to drive yourself to and have faith in your jiu-jitsu to be able to execute your thing? And I would kind of argue that is an egotistical pursuit at its greatest.
Well, to be the best, you might like...
Yeah, but it's not at all a negative thing, right? It's just like, yo, if you're in the arena and you're doing the thing,
yes,
brother, believe in yourself. Like full, like ego fired up to like 10x Grant Cardone levels.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not arrogant. It's not cocky. It's absolutely appropriate, but it is very ego fueled.
Yeah.
So there, I think if we can agree that, then I'm like, well, there's
a counterpoint to that though, because people say when you're under your highest level of stress is when you're in flow, whether you're climbing a mountain or you're fighting for your life, fighting for the title, whatever it might be, that in those moments it's almost automatic. Like as much as it took you a lot of self-belief to get there, in the heat of the battle, it's just, you're not even thinking, you know? Like, so there's this, I'm not saying that's everybody.
Yeah, it's ideal if you can be in flow, but you not always are at that level, right?
No, and it takes, as you say, so much self-belief and so much internal drive to be like, I'm going to overcome this person who potentially is already better than me, but I'm going to find a way to beat them. The idea of beating someone else or exhibiting greater technique is ego. But you'd have to say that, right? And, you know, you guys might disagree, but like go with us on this journey. I actually believe that when you see someone who is really like, oh, I must be humble, and, you know, you mean they bow a lot, they just, and don't want to offend anyone, all this. These are not the best people in jiu-jitsu. They might be great people, but it doesn't mean that they are the best at jiu-jitsu. And if you are someone who's new to jiu-jitsu, this is not like a permission slip to be disrespectful to people. But I honestly believe that being very self-motivated and focusing on what helps you improve is actually the fastest way for you to get better.
You just took us on a left-hand turn, bro.
Did I?
Yeah.
No, well, this is where this is where I wanted to go with it. I don't know what Joey's planning. I've had this plan all along. I'm
Here we are.
Let's go backwards and around the loop. Because think about this. Belts are ego badges.
Well, wait, can we maybe...
No, let me say something controversial right now, Joe.
Yeah. There's plenty of time for you to blow up the mic. What I've taken from that first part then is that ego and humility are not necessarily competing. They're not different ends of the same spectrum. They can coexist. This is what I take from it. And also with the example of someone like Mikey, I think that we got to consider the other qualities. Like what we're saying is him being humble. You could also say that's him being respectful, him being friendly, him being a nice guy. Like, it's not...
someone could have an ego and be friendly. You know, like someone can be very charming.
Yeah.
Like I had somebody say they met Conor McGregor and he was really friendly.
Yeah.
And then I've heard people say that he's the worst person in the whole world, depending on how you've experienced the person.
Yeah.
A single person can be both.
Yeah.
Can express both sides of that, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. But more so that there's a kind of duality there. Like you can be egotistical, you can also be a humble person.
Sure. It's mood almost.
Yeah.
Depending on what the situation might require or depending on where the person is at. So you can see someone before a fight being very egotistical, but then after the fight shaking hands and, making peace unless they're Ronda Rousey. And then they need to get knocked the out and go to the WWE to eat their humble pie. Look, I think it's one of those things. Like, you've got to shake the hands of we see it in jiu-jitsu all the time, right? Like, there can be a lot of beef, but then afterwards, generally people shaking hands and hug it out. And, you've got to give your partner the respect that without them, there's no fight. There's no interaction. So you've got to, even if you don't like them as a person, you can still respect them as an opponent.
Yeah.
And we often see that two great people who they don't necessarily like each other, still after the match will, whether it's a MMA fight, boxing match, they'll still be like, yep, you won, I lost, fair enough.
So now chapter 2.
The
dog leg.
Yeah, let's take it sideways. I mean, I think based off where we are in the discussion, ego really isn't a requirement for improvement.
Ego is?
Yes.
Yep.
You need a sense of self.
Absolutely.
To want to develop, to keep coming back, to not get crushed, and just keep willing yourself to do something hard to get better.
Yep.
Because the want to improve is, is to achieve something,
and
right?
I can be better. I can be stronger.
I want this.
Yeah, I can beat that person, or I can, not get tapped by that person. Like,
I can overcome.
There's ego tied into all of those things.
Mastery is an expression of ego because you want to achieve something. The desire comes from ego. Like, if we go to more like a kind of Buddhist take on it, belts are just ego badges. I don't care what you say, whether you wanted your belt or not, it's status. Status is an ego thing. Now, this may be true or not.
I love the oversimplification.
I'm all about the sound bites, all right? Yeah. But my Taekwondo coach said to me, back in the days, you only had white belt and black belt in Taekwondo.
Right.
And you were just a white belt until your coach deemed you worthy of being a black belt. But the thing is, your belt ages and it tatters and it gets dirty, and you go from a white belt to a grey belt pretty quick, and it gets dirtier and more fucked up, and who knows where that belt goes. But for me, the whole saying of like a white belt, a black belt is just a white belt that didn't quit. I think that's bullshit, actually. A white belt who never quit is just someone who's a white belt for life. You have to get better to get to the next belt. You have to want to get better, and you have to apply the effort to make that happen. Getting a blue belt is a degree of status in your gym. In the same way, purple belt is a degree of status. And this whole status system was made up to keep us on the path. What my Taekwondo coach had said to me was that colored belts were brought in for Westerners. That's what he was saying. Now, whether or not this isn't true, some of you martial arts buffs out there who know the history of Taekwondo better than me, feel free to put it in the comments. But what he said is like, we're really impatient in the West. And this idea that I want to get better sooner, I want to be acknowledged, all these things, we see it all the time, right? That's why people give up. Because they're like, I didn't get my acknowledgement. Didn't get to where I wanted. I'm not as good as I want to be. I haven't got time for this. I'm going to go get my external validation somewhere else. Why is Instagram so popular? Like, what? Because we want the likes. We want to see what's popular. Status is hardwired into our primal brains. So you can talk as much as you want about humility, but this game that we've chosen to play, which is the BJJ game, requires belts, requires status, requires order. This is a thing. And even if you're someone who does no gi and you're like, we're not into belts. It's all about who can tap who, right? It's all about who's better, right? So the only time I have seen, and this is coming from two gentlemen who are probably borderline autistic, the Meow brothers, they said they don't see an opponent. They just see technique versus technique. And these are guys who can never enjoy their success. Even when they're champions, they always look really unhappy. Right? Like, I don't know. Like, I've only met the Meows twice, and I never really got a chance to roll with them.
Happy to dissect them on the show, though.
But no, it's just interesting to me that, I follow them. Like, I'm really interested in them as jiu-jitsu practitioners because they strike me as so different. Because we don't, no. Like, Paulo Meow's like, no, man, like, I'm never scared. I don't think about the opponent in that way. I just see their technique and my technique, and I'm just trying to do my techniques against them. And I hadn't heard Other very high level competitors express it in that way.
Right.
And these are guys who put it all on the line. They'll let you break their foot. They'll let you do whatever, but they're just
Can't
still.
broke what's already broken.
That's it. They're already going for the win. But look at it. We all look up to the people who've done it the best, right? You've got to say that it took a lot of ego and self-belief to get there. So I'm calling out the myth of humility being like an essential quality to being good at BJJ. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's really at the core of why I really wanted to talk about this, because I think it's bullshit. Like, you being humble is not actually helping you be good at BJJ. I'm not saying you're going to be an arrogant prick about it. It's more just like the whole, oh yes, sensei, us. This is not actually helping you get better. If you want to get better at BJJ, you have to have a strong belief in yourself, and you have to be very self-focused, and you got to get after it. And it doesn't mean that you have to be negative to your training partners or you have to say disrespectful things, but your actions have to be around getting it and going for it. And that has to be really strong and consistent. And I don't think humility might make you a nice person. It doesn't make you good at BJJ. We can see that in many, many top competitors. It doesn't mean all of the world's best jiu-jitsu people are arrogant, but you could say they have big egos. You can see that.
Contentious.
Well, what do you got? Let's see the pushback. I want the pushback. I'd like to see holes in this.
Well, I believe that they're not mutually exclusive. So I agree that you need that self-drive. You know, you need ego in order to try to master something, whether you do or you don't, right? Like jiu-jitsu. But you know, if we go back to that definition of humility, it's a modest or low view of one's importance. So I can still be driven and competitive and egotistical, but it doesn't mean that I have to see myself as extremely important. Like, I'm not, like, I can still have those things, because I'm looking at myself, I'm like, I kind of vibe with that idea of it's not particularly important.
Yeah, but
I'm still competitive, and I'm still driven.
But there can be a disconnect between how you see yourself and how you act. Like, some people might think of themselves as humble, but then act. Like, some might be, no, I'm respectful, and then they're very disrespectful to wait staff or drivers.
I mean, they might.
You know,
yeah.
no, I'm saying what I'm trying to express here is how you view yourself and how others view you there can be a disconnect there.
Yes, they can.
Right.
But I don't think that they're like necessarily competing qualities. I think that you can have both.
I think that there's enough things in the world telling you you're not good enough, you're insufficient, that wasn't good enough, your own negative self-talk. Like, we can just see it in how people struggle with life in general, that they need 500 milligrams of Kanye West minus the anti-Semitism. You know, you need confidence. More people need more confidence to do things. There's enough things to talk you out of shit. We can just look at rates of quitting in jiu-jitsu. Like, why is it only few people get to black belt? Because most people talk themselves out of it. It's too hard. It's too much, you know. And you could, I personally believe, as someone who does not lack for confidence, I could have not got to where I am now. I still battle with self-doubt, but my confidence just beats the fuck out of that bullshit. Like, it just, self-doubt, shut the fuck up. Humility, go away. Like, I have to really talk myself into doing things. Otherwise, it's really easy to be like, nah, it's not worth it. It's not for me. No, I'm not good enough. No, call that. I actually, and this isn't to say that you have to be like this 24/7, but in the moments of challenge, at the time where it's actually easiest to shy away from the difficult thing, you got to really, it takes a lot of energy. It's lucky I'm hyperactive to be able to muster the energy on a regular basis to get yourself through those challenges. And more confidence and a bit more ego is actually not, you know, some people might argue the other way and say, oh, ego is what holds you back because you don't want to look bad. Oh, I don't want to look bad, so I won't do something I suck at. Right? So there's a counterpoint to that.
Yeah. I mean, too much of it, right, is a problem.
Yes.
And this is why I totally agree with your point. again, I think that, yeah, you can have that, but it doesn't mean that you have to squash humility in order to be that guy. You can be that guy and also have humility. Mikey Musumeci. Like, you know what I mean? That's like, if we're kind of going off what we know of him, seeing him in the media and stuff, you're like extremely competitive, best in the world, obviously getting better all the time, pushes himself, really lovely guy, probably doesn't hold his own desires. Like, they're not the most important thing in the world. He's like, I'm just here, one championship, trying to just show my jiu-jitsu. He's not like, I'm the greatest of all time.
No, I mean, I think Mikey's talked about having mental health slumps as well. He's like, yeah, I had 6 months where I couldn't train properly and I had all these self-doubt and, you know, all the negative voices in your head, you know, and he's overcome that, which is like amazing. And, you know, who knows what Gordon says to himself in the quiet of his hotel room, looking at pictures of Nicky Rod, being like, he's totally juicing. He was always juicing.
So have we arrived at the true meaning of this episode, JT?
I don't know. Tell me, Joe. What meaning do you derive?
This is what I'm picking up.
Okay.
Is that you need to have self-belief and you need to have drive and you need to have confidence in order to progress at this game.
Sure.
Is that kind of what you're scratching at?
Yeah, I definitely. And I think it's also, the challenge is that it's always easier than it looks. So anyone who starts jiu-jitsu is like, you're just rolling around on the ground. And then you try it and you're like, holy shit, this is so much harder. Physically, technically, everything. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And a lot of people will attest to that. It's always easier from the outside, and then once you're in it. I think to keep yourself on the jiu-jitsu path, you have to do things to renew your self-belief. And having an abundance of confidence is incredibly helpful. I think the overemphasis on humility is actually not helping anyone in jiu-jitsu. I think it's like many things. When you get to the upper end, or once you hit brown belt and you get a black belt and stuff like that, it opens your eyes up because you realize how many of the levels there is to the game. And that possibly just by, they say, the wise man or the wise person knows what they do not know. You get to see how the biggest deficit in your knowledge. So even though you would assume you get to black belt, you're an expert, you're like, nah, I kind of know what I know, but there's all this other stuff I need to learn. I think earlier in the journey is not the time to be humble. And maybe it's just a process of discovery that you go through the journey and then you become humble because you start to understand how big it is and you just don't know how big it is at the start. But I think one of the problems is, and this is just what I see as a problem in the society, we like to please others. We like to make other people happy. We want to be cool. We want to fit in. And actually, when I look at the people who are killing it, they don't give a f***. They do not care at all. The killer blue belts are the blue belts who are trying to tap the black belt. They're the ones who are like, I'm coming for everyone and I'm going to be the best. And that is actually a great signal for their achievements long term. And they're the ones who tend to rise up to the ranks faster and they tend to get there quicker. So if you're someone who wants to rise up to the ranks and do better, I would say that the overemphasis on humility will not help you. That's what I'm going to say.
Very good.
Okay. Is that neat enough as a conclusion?
Absolutely not. But well,
Joe's like, let's wrap it up. Let's get the music rolling.
Everything I said, but yeah, no, that's fair. Like that's your viewpoint. I totally get it. Yeah, I don't think they compete. I think you can have both, but I think there's a lot of takeaways in that exchange nonetheless.
Come on, Joe. Disagree with me more. Let's blow this up. let's Joe's like, no, I accept.
I think you can be the killer blue belt. I think you can put the heat on people. You can have a strong drive and sense of desire and competitive spirit and all those things. And you can also be a humble person. That's what I believe.
That's possible.
Yeah, and so ¿por qué no los dos?
Why not both? Which is a good point. We can have both.
There it is, fam. Give us some comments on that. Love to hear what you think. That's a big one.
Don't stay humble. That's what I say. Stay savage.
Choose your sides.